Good morning, guys. So the following video is the most inspiring video that I have ever seen, and I hope after you watch this whole thing and listen to it, you have a different outlook on life, and you realize that maybe your life isn't so bad, and as long as you keep going and have hope, um, you can get through it. So here we go.
Stir it up, Nick. We're live.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Put the ear cups on and cheers, sir.
Oh, man. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me out here, man.
So real quick, this guy's name is Nick Yarris. Nick's a good name, but yeah, he was wrongfully imprisoned for many decades, and for the alleged rape and murder of a woman. But I'll let him tell it for you.
And I know we meant to do this before, but I hope now with all this good energy between us, we can do this properly for the audience.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, man, to say that you've had a crazy experience in this life is one of the most understated things a person could ever say. I mean, where do we begin, right?
I want you to keep in mind as you're watching this, if you think your life's bad and fucked up, okay, it can always get worse. I mean, I thought my life was fucked up, but listening to his story and how he came out of it, I mean, yeah, there's nothing that you can't get through if you don't want. I mean, as long as you want to keep going.
Let's tell everybody your story. So, you were wrongfully committed of murder. You spent 22 years on death row before you were exonerated by DNA evidence.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Yarris, and I was, as Joe said, convicted and sentenced to die for a rape and murder I didn't commit at the age of 21 in 1981. A woman named Mrs. Craig was murdered in Delaware. I had never met the woman. I was in prison on unrelated charges, and I stupidly made up a story to try and get out of those charges. The police soon realized that I was a liar, and they fabricated the charges around me then. So it's ironic that in a few days you're going to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, and that's where the murder happened, really, basically. And Linda Mae Craig was leaving her job at 4:05 p.m. on December 15th, 1981. She's going home. She gets abducted. I don't know any of this, but I tried in desperation to get out of a lie that this officer put on me. I got pulled over in a stolen car. The cop beats me up. He puts charges on me. I'm facing life imprisonment, and I'm a junkie. Because all of my life I was destroyed by what happened to me at the age of 7. I had my head beaten in by a man with a rock in his hand after he sexually assaulted me. And I did all the stupid things that people can do in the aftermath. I kept it a secret. And I let it foster all the anger in me. I became very aggressive as a child, and I ended up in trouble all the time. And when I was in prison on these unrelated charges to the murder, I stupidly fell into that mindset of desperation of trying to get out of it. So the police put a prisoner in the cell next to me. He said I confessed to him. I was given a 3-day trial. I was sentenced to death and put on death row. And then, stupidly, I escaped from prison in 1985 and ended up on the FBI's most wanted list.
How'd you get out?
Now, real quick, you know, we know there's always going to be corrupt cops, but you know, there's corrupt people in every profession, but especially, you know, back in like the 80s. I mean, you know, there was a lot of corrupt cops, which we now know. There's plenty of evidence out there. But yeah, imagine you're getting put on death row for falsely murdering and raping a lady in Delaware at the age of 21. I mean, that that's crazy.
I was being transported to court, and the sheriffs were being cool with me at first. They were talking about what was going on in Philly. They were two nice guys, like 60, 68, 67. And we drove 5 hours from one of the hardest prisons in America called Huntington. And I left there after spending 2 years of my first 2 years in silence. So if you opened your mouth, they would come in and beat your head in. So I was so glad to get in the car because my mom was waiting in my lawyer's office because they were going to give me a review of my trial because they withheld so much evidence. So I was eager to go to court. And it was the coldest day of 1985, February 15th.
Now, I want you to also keep in mind, when he went to prison, he stuttered. He couldn't talk. He couldn't read. I mean, he would always get made fun of for stuttering. So he speaks so well now because while he was in prison, he worked so hard to fix that because as in his mind he the only thing he wanted to do was when he was being put to death, he wanted to speak so well about himself before they executed him and let everybody know how good of a person he really is. And but you'll see.
We stopped at a gas station in Exton, Pennsylvania. And as I got out of the car, the officer driving pulled past the cubicles. Now, we all got out of the car and ran over to the cubicle together, and I went in and started peeing. And the officer's holding the door for me, and my eyeglasses start fogging up. You know what I mean? Because you go from the freezing cold to the warm to the cold, your eyeglasses. So all I know is I turn around and I come out, and he has the door like that, and I put my head down, go under his arm, and I turn left and go back to the car. And the dude smoking a cigarette doesn't know that his partner went into the cubicle to piss. And as I'm running back to the dude, he pulls his pistol out and point blank shoots at me, Joe, like, pow! And as it went past my face, I was like, oh, shit. I hit the ground. I ran, and he's following me with the gun. I could feel it like I was waiting for him to blast me,
Why did he shoot at you?
Because he thought I overpowered his partner.
Oh.
He doesn't know. His testimony at trial was, I turn around, Nick's running at me, my partner's down or gone. I pulled my gun and he runs, and I wasn't going to let a death row prisoner run, so I tried to stop him. I shot.
And the cop probably saw, that's why he talked about his fogged up glasses. It looks like he was, breathing real hard in a fight too,
So I run around the corner, I hit the ground, I ripped all the skin off my hands. I run around the corner and I fly towards this restaurant, and there's all these people innocently eating dinner. And I'm running right towards the plate glass window because he ain't going to blast me, And I ran like I knew he couldn't shoot. And then I shot around the corner. And I ran down to a gas station. I tried to steal a car. That didn't work. Then I ran like 400 yards, 400 yards, 400 yards. And I hid behind the car I just escaped from. And I was laying in the weeds behind the gas station about 50 yards from them while they were screaming, who was the bigger idiot for letting this happen? And I was thinking, oh, my God, like, what am I doing? What do I do, Joe? How do I just jump up and say, wait a minute, it was a mistake? They already tried to shoot me in the face.
Yeah, I put in the comments what you guys would do, in that situation, right? They're already trying to kill you, If you try and surrender, they might try and just shoot you again, right? So who knows? I don't know what I would have done in that situation.
Right. So I go hide behind the police station, and next 4 hours, oh my God, I'm being chased by a helicopter. And he chases me, and he pins me, and he chases me. And I was so fit that I ran for 4 hours through the woods without caring what the branches did to my face or nothing, man. I blew out both quads. I did my hamstrings. I ripped my feet open. I ran so hard in terror that I didn't care, man. And I got away. And I made it all the way to Florida, and I was going to leave the country and all this. And I said, I gotta go back.
How did you get to Florida?
I stole a dude's wallet in New York and I got on an airplane.
Oh, and you can tell this guy's telling the truth. I mean, he doesn't hesitate when Joe asked him any question, right? You can just tell by his face and his expressions, how he's talking, that this is a true story, man. And this is fucking crazy. I'm glad he made it.
And I went down to Florida and I tried to rob a drug dealer. And I tried to I was sitting there, I was so angry, I was going to kill myself. I was I'll never forget this day. I didn't want my folks to see me in prison handcuffs no more, So I was going to buy a raft and I was going to go out in the ocean and I was going to have one last party with all the foods that I loved. Then I was going to stab the raft, wait for the sharks after I cut my wrist, And then I was going to cap myself and go.
That's how depressed and he felt he had no other options. I mean, he was about to go in the ocean, have one last eat his favorite meals, stab the boat, let the sharks come with all the blood, and shoot himself, and then let the sharks eat him. I mean, you can't get more hopeless than that, right? So if he can pull himself out of that, then you can pull yourself out of whatever the fuck you're going through right now, right?
So no, I'm going back. So I turned myself back in. They put me on death row in Florida. And I went back and I faced it, So they beat me for 4 minutes, man. They broke my face, broke my back, crushed me, man, tortured me. And I thought,
look how he's crying just talking about it. I mean, this is a true statement, and this guy is a hard dude mentally.
I'm gonna get you back. For all the days you made me go in a cage and beat some other prisoner while you stood there with a club laughing at me. I'm gonna get you back. I'm gonna make sure I start being a loving person again. So I'm sitting there in 1986 with 105 years plus a death penalty. And I decided, fuck this. I'm going to be a nice guy. So I started to learn, okay, I suffer from aphasia. I had my head beaten in with a rock. So
what is aphasia?
Aphasia can be identified simply in people who have stuttering disorder. Their brain and their vernacular abilities are distorted by a disruption in their brain. Either their brain is functioning too fast or their mouth is functioning too fast, or there's a combination of a misfiring. And aphasia can be through trauma or through genetics. And aphasia affected my life so much as a young person, I never had the respect to listen to people because I couldn't function. I couldn't articulate. I couldn't speak. When I was at trial, people spoke words that I didn't understand. And it frustrated me. And when I tried to speak and I'd stutter, people would be like, duh, 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 come on, retard, what do you got to say? So, after that beating, where they beat me for 4 minutes and they broke my face, I began practicing speaking to myself. Every day, I learned new words, and I taught myself how to correctly articulate that word into a sentence beautifully for my own self, in my cell, every day. And then I became very, very good at writing. I began helping other prisoners. I became the most dangerous prisoner that they held because I cared about other men. I wrote to their mothers. I wrote letters to their lawyers. I gave up opportunities for people to write books about me so I could help another innocent man. I did all those things because that's how I got back at them for what they did to me. So, in 1988, I'm sitting in my cell.
Yeah, I can relate to this too, because years ago I wasn't a good person. I wouldn't consider myself a good person, but I changed my mind, and now I am a good person, I believe, and I'm gonna I remember all those people that didn't believe in me. So, yeah, I can relate to this guy too. And I bet you a lot of you out there can too as well, right?
and I read about DNA, and I knew right then I could prove my innocence. So I was the first man in America in February of 1988 to ask for DNA testing to prove my innocence. And they threw away all the autopsy material. And when I discovered new evidence, they destroyed that. And this woman who came to meet me and start visiting me fell in love with me, and she believed in me. So she stood by me and told me that she would be with me either to the gallows walk or to the moment I proved my innocence. And
See, that's the type of person that everybody needs to find, or I hope I find someone like that, you know.
for 9 years, she stood by me, And finally, we found some evidence that was testable in 1995.
What was the evidence?
It was sperm from a rape. And it was being sent out here to California to Dr. Edward Blake. And it broke open in transport and spilled. So,
Can you imagine that? The last thing that could help you get, exonerated and it sets you free somehow breaks open on the way to get tested. I mean, wow. But he still didn't give up.
So, Jackie left me. Had nothing left. And then they put me in a special unit. And they started torturing me. I keep this part quiet. I never told the story. It would ruin what happened in Fear of 13 that's now out on Netflix.
Fear of 13 on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to. I suggest you guys do too.
But they finally closed down the old prison I was in for 12 years, where the average rate of survival was only 5. And I was one of the hardest dudes there, and I made it. They closed the prison down, and they opened up Greene County Supermax. And the courts ordered that every prisoner in Pennsylvania be allowed out of their cell for 8 hours. The administration looked at each other and said, fuck that, not the crazy cannibals and not the serial killers, not the dudes that have been assaulting and raping each other. So they picked 48 of us out and they put us in Pittsburgh in a special penitentiary setting in which we were in a sealed unit. And they put all these guards in there that weren't allowed to touch other prisoners because they were so violent, and told them we're giving you the craziest of the crazy. You know Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lamb was a real man, right? His name was Gary Heidnick. He abducted black women in Philadelphia and put them in a pit under his house and fed one of them to the other survivors because he was building a master race. He was my neighbor, man.
That was his fucking neighbor in the jail, right next door. And for 23 hours a day, they were locked in their cells, right? That is crazy. And one more thing, all these people that, anonymously leave these comments on people's shit or mine, right? And, they don't have their picture, and they have a screen, a name like None Your Business, right? Because they want to stay anonymous, but they try and bring people down, right? Everybody's got something in their past that they don't like about themselves, okay? I don't care who you are. Nobody's a saint, right? So it just doesn't make sense why people even do that.
Like, so they started torturing us and doing all this psychological crazy shit to us where they were feeding us to each other like wolves. So I kept it all quiet until this year when, once again, misfortune fell in my life and I released Monsters and Madmen, the new book that I was going to give you today. And I thought, I gotta tell that story, But it's been so hard to come back from these moments, Joe. It's just like, I look at what they did to me and how I went to that moment where the DNA is gone. Jackie leaves me. And so I find out I'm dying from hepatitis C that they did when they infected me of it when they broke my teeth, when they beat me.
So here he is, right at that moment. He's in another hopeless, it seems hopeless, right? But he still didn't give up.
So I asked to be executed. I said, I studied all the world's religions. I read over 9,000 books. I did everything in piety my mother asked me to do while I was in prison. I don't want to die like Dale Carter did, with the guards coming to his cell and taunting him, teasing him, and listening to a man scream in agony because the bile in his belly is killing him.
Yeah, there's people that write in the comments anonymously, right? Just like these guards that come in and taunt these prisoners, right? It's just pieces of shit, you know. They must not feel good about themselves, so when they see people succeeding, they try and bring them down, right? But it doesn't work. It actually has the opposite effect, you know. Well, at least for like I can speak for myself, right? If somebody says that, it actually makes me want to succeed even more.
So I wrote to the courts and I asked to be executed.
And same with Nick's Yarris's case, right? It made him stronger. He just wanted to get back at him even more.
Fuck it, man. I want to die as a man I love, who can respect himself. The court intervened and ordered the DNA testing that was going to be done on the evidence expelled. In July of 2003, the DNA test come back and they proved me innocent.
How did the evidence spilled and they just captured it once it spilled?
It was in a box with all this evidence, and Dr. Edward Blake, who did the O.J. Simpson trial DNA, said that there would be challenges to it if he did the DNA in 1999, 1998. In 2003, they had advanced mitochondrial DNA separation so well that he felt confident in his results.
So from the time the DNA spilled, in the late 90s to now when they're going to retest it in like 2003, the DNA process had advanced that much where the doctor knew that he could get a conclusive result even though it's spilled, which that couldn't have been done a couple years ago. So now he's got hope again, right?
So the federal court got involved and said, look, I don't want to have this man executed. I want the DNA done. So they did that, and it was amazing that on the day that I called the lawyers, they revealed the truth to me. I called his lawyer, and I'm like, what's up? He goes, Nick, we got DNA from 3 separate sources that prove you innocent. And I said, that's amazing, Mike. I'm really grateful.
Now, after all these years that he's went through all this shit and been locked up, almost killed, tortured, and then the lawyers, for all these years they thought he was guilty too, right? And then once they reveal that he's innocent, which he knew the whole time, all he says is, "No, that's great. I'm grateful." He didn't just jump up and start doing whatever. All he just said was humbly, "That's grateful." I'm grateful. That's excellent.
He goes,
That's what an innocent man would do. That's been in jail all this time with no hope.
No, we used to tell people you're crazy, that we never believed in you. I'm really sorry for that. Man, really? You want to take away my joy now, man? So I was really downcast that the day I called my mother. My brother Mikey was having a seizure at her feet because he was an alcoholic after he fell off a roof, and he died shortly after, so it just went fucking crazy from there. They take me off death row, and they put me in a psychological cell, and they tell me they can't trust me. That no human being who has had done to them what we've done to you cannot be angry. That if we open this door up and we let you out, you're going to get us.
So they tortured him and did whatever to him so much that they believed when they opened that door, now that he's a free man, and while he was waiting to sent home, they thought they knew they did some terrible shit to him, that they had to transfer him somewhere else, because now they were afraid that they were going to be tortured and killed for what they did to him. You see how karma comes back around? You see how the tables turn?
So we're going to leave you until the day they let you out. We're going to leave you in this cell because we don't trust you not to kill us for what we did to you.
What did they do to you?
They used to have a thing called Gladiator Day. So the lieutenant would be off on a Sunday.
And if you think he's lying, look this up. Look up the gladiator days in the jail. I mean, this was a real thing. I've looked it up already.
And the guards who started to come from the Philadelphia area were black. And they didn't like the guards up in the hillbillies beating on black prisoners. So a weird thing happened where this lieutenant came up with an idea. Well, look, let's let the prisoners get this frustration out of you guys by you pick out the biggest guy and you pick out this.
And if they didn't fight, then the police would just either kill him and make it look like a suicide, or beat him almost to death anyway. So they had to fight. They didn't have a chance. They didn't have a choice.
This guy. So one day I'm sitting there minding my own business, and they open up my cell, and there's 4 of them with clubs. You're up. So I got to go in the cage, and I got to go and hurt somebody while they stand outside. And if you don't fight, they're going to come in, and they're going to beat you worse than you can beat a man or get beaten by one man.
So they did all this for their entertainment. Were they ever punished for this?
Not until after the riot, when one of them testified against the others for the murder and stuff. I've watched 11 people commit suicide. I've been stabbed, strangled, beaten senseless. The guards used to taunt me because I was accused of a psychological murder, of going out and stalking this poor woman because she looked like my girlfriend, they said. So I was never treated like a prisoner. I was treated with deference. The worst word I know in the English dictionary.
Deference. The worst word he knows in the English dictionary is how he describes being treated.
The way I was treated was so harsh that it was cruel beyond cruel. And yet, all I wanted to do was have enough within me to learn to beautifully speak, so that on the day that they executed me, I could tell them how much I cared about myself.
Wow.
That was more important to me than living, because somehow, when you suffer like I have suffered, your head cracks open, and you have a hypersensitivity to life, so that when you touch other human beings, you never forget the 14 years no one was allowed to touch you. You know what? Fuck this. I ain't crying no more.
No human contact for 14 years. I can't imagine that, man.
What?
It's all right, man. There's nothing wrong with crying.
No, I just thought about it. You know what, Joe?
Not?
I do, because I feel bad for the heart.
You shouldn't feel
no,
bad
because I
about
look
crying.
in your arms and your eyes, and I see the hurt that I'm causing you for doing this.
No. Don't worry about that, man.
All right, well,
Listen,
this is what I know.
All I'm doing is trying to imagine what your life has been like. Don't you worry about me at all.
I'm harder than life, and I'm kinder than love. Secretly, I'm a saint. I never hurt no one. I try my best to be polite every day. And I've had misfortune at every turn. And I'm very sorry that I sit in this chair today after it came about.
That's the end of this clip. You know, you can see the whole video on Joe Rogan's page, but I just wanted to share that with you. I mean, that's probably the most inspiring stories I've ever heard. So, think about that, guys. You know, there's always hope. Don't give up. But until next time, True Crime King.